Oh, good. So, hello and welcome all to our WOMEESA Postgrad July workshop. My name is Fernanda Alvarado Neves, and I am joined by Alanis, and together we will be hosting today's postgraduate workshop about career pathways in earth sciences. I begin today by acknowledging the traditional owners of this land in which I am today, the Wurundjeri and Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation, and recognizes their continuing connection to the land. And as WOMEESA is an international organization, we wish to acknowledge Maori as Tangata Whenua and Te Tiriti o Waitangi partners in Aotearoa, New Zealand. We also acknowledge the traditional custodians of country and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Indigenous people were the first Australian and New Zealand earth and environmental scientists, and we have a lot to learn from their deep knowledge that spans tens of thousands of years. This WOMEESA workshop was designed to support our student members and provide them with examples of different career pathways throughout different fields in geosciences. We have an excellent panel lined up for you today, but before I introduce them, I will explain a bit more about how today's workshop will run. First, we will hear from each of our panel members on their journey to get to their current jobs, and then we will have an opportunity to ask them questions. We have some pre-prepared questions, but please use the chat or raise your hand at the end of the three speakers to ask yours. Now, with all of that done, I would love to introduce our first panelist, Dr. Jessica Stromberg. Jess is a senior research scientist in the Mineral Resources Business Unit of the CSIRO, where she leads the Mineral Footprints team and is chair of Pride at CSIRO. She works at the interface of research and the mineral industry, developing tools and applications of spectral datasets from the X-ray to far infrared for critical minerals exploration. Please welcome Jess. Yes, you would like to share your screen?
No, I don't actually need to. I didn't prepare any slides.
That's okay.
Because do you want me to start with my journey or and then?
Yes, please.
Sure. Yeah. All right. Hi everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So my name's Jess Stromberg, and my pronouns are she, her, and I'm joining you today from the traditional lands of the Palawa people in Lutruwita or Tasmania. And so with the CSIRO, as Fernanda said, but I guess my journey in earth science or environmental science started in Canada. So I grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, also known as Winterpeg, where I studied at the University of Winnipeg, and I actually did a bachelor's in biochemistry because I didn't know there was careers in earth science, and I was good at science, and so my parents were like, you should be a doctor, you should do biochemistry. And the uni I went to didn't have an earth science or geoscience program, and so I didn't have that option, and I went there because they had a better basketball program than the other uni in my city, which had a geoscience program. And so I ended up doing an honors in biochemistry that kind of leaned towards the environmental microbiology side of things. And somehow in one of my upper year classes had a prof that came in and was looking for summer students to do astrobiology fieldwork, which I thought sounded really cool. And so that summer I went out in the field with him went to Mars analog sites across Manitoba, impact craters, cold springs, stuff like that, collected samples and came home with bags of rocks. And my mom was like, well, you've been doing this since you were a little kid. Every time we went somewhere, you came back with a bag of rocks. And from that, I started to look at options in what to do next. My grades weren't high enough for medical school. I was more interested in basketball and collecting rocks than I was my coursework. But that experience working with that prof got me involved in a I guess funding program at the time in Canada called the Canadian Astrobiology Training Program, which then looped me in with a whole network of researchers across the country working in that field, and connected me with some folks at the University of Western Ontario on Southern Ontario, where I ended up going in as a master's student to do geomicrobiology, which was kind of just tangential to what I've been doing prior. And now, around 15 years later, I'm doing geochemistry and instrument development. But that journey into geomicrobiology brought me to a gold mine, an Archean gold mine, where I collected samples and went underground for the first time and started getting really interested in kind of early earth, early life biosignatures. And for somehow during that course of my PhD, I went from studying organic biosignatures to the fingerprint of Archean gold mineralization and pyrite and other things and stable isotopes. It was a wild journey, but I had the flexibility to kind of follow what I found interesting in that space. And so during that time, I also had the opportunity to work in industry. And so my field site for my thesis was a gold mine, and it was at the time the longest continuously operating underground gold mine in the world. And I spent 2 kind of 6-month stints working as a production geologist in underground mining during my PhD. And because I did it in Canada, it's a more extended kind of program. Yeah, pirate's not that bad. I did a lot of teaching as well, and so I was teaching labs and things like that. And from there, I wasn't sure what to do next, but the prof I'd worked for as an undergrad offered me a postdoc back with him. He had funding, was looking for a postdoc that had dabbled in spectroscopy, so reflectance spectra. That's what I did with him as an undergrad, looking at meteorites and those Mars analog sites. But during my PhD, I'd done just purely geochemistry and mineralogy, very ore deposit focused. So that pulled me back into the spectral realm. I hadn't really applied it to ore deposit studies or geoscience beyond the space kind of realm. And while I was there, I spent that kind of year teaching first year courses and second year courses and kind of combining the work I'd done as a PhD student in trace element mapping of pyrites using synchrotron techniques and getting back into the spectral realm and figuring out what to do next. And I applied for several, I guess, different postdocs. I applied for a job at CSIRO, which I was familiar. I'd heard of the CSIRO because of their, I guess, the research they do is known worldwide, but mainly because I had used something called the Maya detector, which is a CSIRO-developed XRF detector at one of the synchrotrons in the US when I was doing my PhD work. So it's kind of roundabout, and they were hiring for a spectral geologist, which is reflectance spectra isn't something that's traditionally taught in undergrad courses, so they're few and far between. Not so much anymore, but that was kind of my foot in the door, was that I dabbled with spectral data, never in the context of ore deposit geology, but I had the geochemistry side of things. And so I interviewed for the job at CSIRO while at the same time interviewing for faculty positions in Canada and deciding whether to do a postdoc with the GSC, so the Geological Survey of Canada, and ended up not getting the faculty position, turning down the GSC postdoc and moving to Perth, which was kind of from -30 in Winnipeg when I did my interview to +30 landing in Perth 6 months later. And so it was quite a range. So I came in for a postdoc, and 5 years later, next month, I'm still at the CSIRO, nominally based in Perth, but combining kind of that previous dabbling I'd done in spectral geology and turning that into, it's kind of become my one of my areas of expertise now. Something I never thought I'd be touching again, but something I really enjoy. And so in my role at CSIRO now, I'm a team leader of the Mineral Footprints team, which is a group of kind of 5 different multidisciplinary geoscientists who look at the footprints around mineral deposits. I lead a project in the MinXCRC developing a downhole LIBS tool, and I'm the chair of Product CSIRO, which is our LGBTIQA+ staff network of allies and identifying folks. And I've been involved in that for a few years, and so just recently taken on the chair of that in the last 6 months. And so I guess that's where I am now, in the short version of how I got there. From there.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Yes, I'm sure there will be a lot of questions regarding how you transition from such different fields in biology to mineral exploration and spectral mineralogy. That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh, yes.
I am going to introduce now our next panelist, Mikayla Sambrooks. Mikayla is a geophysicist at Newcrest Mining, where she designs and monitors geophysical surveys, and she interprets these geophysical signals to help the generative team and site exploration teams at Newcrest to identify prospects, targets, and delineate ore deposits. Welcome, Mikayla.
Thanks, Fernanda. I'm hoping everyone can hear me okay. Muted again. Okay, so that's working now. Yeah, thanks for inviting me to be on this today. This is really cool. I've actually never been to a WOMEESA event, so yeah, this is a first for me. And yeah, thank you for having me along. My story is probably considerably shorter than Jess's, but I think this is my third year out of university, so sort of that very similar story that a lot of geologists have. I didn't know that what I was going to do when I went to university. I did undergrad at the University of Melbourne, and it was just a Bachelor of Science, so pretty generic, and they get you to do a little bit of everything in the first year. Luckily, I thought I was going to go into biology or chemistry as well, and I loved that in high school. And then when I got to university, I quickly found that it was very different in the university setting, and you sort of become one of hundreds of students, and the professor might not even know your name and that kind of thing. And then I did one earth science subject, and it was a much smaller cohort, and the professors were all really personal, and they knew everyone by name, and it was just sort of a very inviting environment. And I found that I just loved the subject, and I did really well without trying too hard, which was obviously something that everyone enjoys. If they're good at something and then they enjoy it, then I think it's a natural progression to continue down that pathway, and that's what I did. So from first year then on, I just chose every single geology related subject that I possibly could. Even in the electives that I chose, they were all like archaeology or anything that was remotely related or used some of the same scientific methods that were used in earth sciences. So I just threw myself into it and really loved it and just kept going with it. And yeah, by third year, which is when I got introduced to geophysics, that's when I really decided, oh, this is something that I really, really like. I enjoy this. It's very multidisciplinary, and I decided I'd take 6 months off, and then I would do a master's focusing on geophysics, but still from a very multidisciplinary approach. So, utilizing geochronology and petrophysics and modeling, all of that, and also a little bit of economic geology with the gold aspect. So rolling all that into the master's project that I did, I really loved it, and I learned so much in terms of, I guess, self-discipline and time management, and even just to the research side of things. I found a new respect for research scientists and people that dedicate their lives to academia. And then towards the end of my master's, I applied for a bunch of graduate programs, BHB, Newcrest, all the big ones, FMG, looking for a geophysics graduate program, which didn't exist. It wasn't really a thing. So I got into the exploration geology graduate program with Newcrest, which didn't start until a year after I'd already submitted my thesis for masters. So for that year in between, I went to North Queensland and I worked for TerraSearch, which is basically like a consultant geology. They're like a one-stop shop. They have field geologists and all types of people that they consult out to different companies or exploration projects. So I got to work on a range of different exploration projects in North Queensland, doing a bunch of different things. And I expressed to them then that I had an interest in geophysics. So I got to acquire quite a lot of geophysics as well, ground magnetics and gravity and that kind of thing in the field. So I did some field work for my master's, but this was just a one step up from that. And so now, I felt that I had the field work and I also had the theory behind it. And I was really prepared when I came into work for Newcrest. But by then I was going into an exploration geology graduate program rather than a geophysics program. So the first sort of 18 months or more, 20 months of that program, I spent at the Havieron Project, where I did mostly exploration geology tasks, drill rig monitoring and core logging and QAQC on assays and things like that, which was all really, really great experience. And I feel very privileged that I have that experience. And about October last year, I transitioned full-time into the geophysics role at Newcrest and out of the graduate program. So since then, I've had the opportunity to work on so many different geophysical techniques, and really from where I started in potential fields, so magnetic and gravity, I've come a long way, and I've learned a lot about the electromagnetic surveying side of things, which is just like a whole nother thing, and dabbling as well a little bit into the spectral side of things with, I know Mary will be all over this, but a third-party company that we partner with, Descartes Labs, which is uses all spectral data. It's sort of like ArcGIS, but for spectral data. It's probably the easiest way to explain it. So looking after that as well for Newcrest, and yeah, it's been a roller coaster, but it's been a really fun and challenging environment, and yeah, it's been really good. So I think that's where I'm at today.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Mikayla. I'm sure that since you finished recently your degree, you will have a lot of insightful tips for people that is just finishing and how to move into the industry.
Yeah,
So well, I will introduce now our final speaker, Dr. Indrani Mukherjee. Indrani is a lecturer at the School of Biological Earth and Environmental Sciences from the University of New South Wales. Indrani has always been fascinated with the fact that the transition of a simple cell into a complex one billions of years ago is the reason we share the planet with millions of species today. So now she investigates what drove that biological transition. For this, she employs novel and cutting-edge geochemical techniques to understand ancient marine environments. Please welcome Indrani. You are mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you now. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. And yeah, when I first got the invitation, this is what was going across my mind, thinking, oh, I don't know if my career pathway is going to be relevant to anyone on the panel, but thank you very much for the opportunity, because yeah, I would love to share. Yeah, but I've prepared slides, unfortunately, in a terrible academic style, so I'll go through them very quickly. I think it's really important I mention my origins to make sure how my career has spanned over the last 10 years. So I'm originally from India and from the state of West Bengal, and I deliberately put this map here because India is incredibly diverse. I'm sure everyone knows that, but we're also very diverse in terms of our food, and I love food. So I thought I'd use this map. So I was born in West Bengal, but I never really spent much time because I went up to Uttarakhand, which is further up north, to a boarding school. So spent almost 10 years there, and we were a very close sort of bunch of people. Here are some of my school photographs. The school was up in the hills. We were 23 of us in our batch. So, you tend to get admitted in a school with 23, and you continued on with that same 23, which is quite, unheard of in a big country like India. You tend to have hundreds of students in your class, but this boarding school was quite unique. We were very close. We still are. Had a wonderful upbringing in my boarding school, and learned some really core skills. I can go through them later on if we have any questions, but really I am extremely grateful to my parents for sending me to that boarding school. I learned a lot. There were students from various parts of India, so diversity came very naturally. to us. We learn to accept each other, fight with each other, and understand each other. And there are lots of things, like I cited here in bullet points, that I learned in my school. One thing that I really want to mention is that we were all, for some reason, coerced into participating in the marathon, and I, hated it. But it really taught us to not give up, because it was something that you didn't end up, liking, but because you did it for such a long time, you kind of taught yourself to not give up. And it was something that I still use a lot in my life. So yeah, some core skills developed in my boarding school. Then went to New Delhi for my university. Again, incredibly busy, polluted, lovely place. I can't believe I said polluted and lovely in the same sentence, but trust me, it is. It's a fantastic place to be. So that's where I did my undergrads and masters, but I also had a massive health scare. I had a tumor in my body for some reason, and so things kind of went downhill, and I lost interest in geology almost. But we had some fantastic teachers at our university, where specifically the economic geology teacher, Professor Dave. He was incredible, and he basically sparked my interest back into geology. I was very sure I was going to give it up, but it was our fantastic teachers at our university that really sparked my interest back, and I was determined to do a master's after my BSc honors, and then moved to a different country altogether, which was a huge deal for me. I'd never traveled overseas before. I'd never traveled on a plane before. I didn't know how to cook, and I barely did any house chores. So it was let's say, a very steep learning. I can cook very well, even if I say so myself. I think my husband will agree. I can cook. Let's just put it that way. But yeah, when I first arrived, my goodness, I knew nothing. I was just so geared to do my PhD, and there were these other things that I had to do, and I was like, what? No one told me how to do that. So yeah, big culture shock. Did my PhD, had a fantastic time. Fell in love with pyrite and its chemistries and its multiple applications in deep time geology, mineral exploration, which then led to a lot of industry contacts. And I've worked with industry through the course of my postdoctoral research. And I really, I'm grateful for that industry support, because getting a postdoctoral salary or funding in academia is extremely tough. And so I think industry support was very key. But yeah, and then I moved on to take up a lecturer position, but it was on a contract basis. I was moving from one postdoctoral contract to another. I think it's a common journey for a lot of people who finish their PhD. So yeah, one contract journal to another. And then lots and lots of challenges, and I think I won't go into them now, but if someone asks me, I'm definitely willing to share some of them with you. But because postdoc was getting very short-term contract, I had to try and see if I could venture out into, I don't know, different place. Oh, this was a slide. I'll mention this later on. Went off to do another postdoc at University of Toronto. So basically moved my 9.5 years of life in Australia to Canada for a 2-year postdoc, only to find out that I'd gotten a job back at University of New South Wales. So last year was quite incredible, because yeah, I moved to Toronto in May, then came back to Australia in December via India, where I got married. Then got married again in Hobart in December, and then moved our life from Hobart, drove all the way from Hobart to Sydney to join the University of New South Wales. Yeah, it was quite incredible, and I'm still exhausted. Just before I finish my spiel, just wanted to let you know that I've had lots and lots of mentors along the way, and that's something I really want to emphasize when I get the opportunity during the question and answer session. He is one of one of my mentors, and I would have almost given up geology at one point. If it wasn't for Jackie, I probably wouldn't be continuing. So really would like to emphasize on the importance of having really good mentors around yourselves. So I've had a fair few. Jackie is one of them. And I think that's it from me.
Thank you so much, Indrani. That's thanks for sharing all your journey since you were a kid, and you had a really exciting 2022 after 2 years of pandemic. So I'm sure you are still recovering for that. Thank you. So I will start with the pre-prepared questions now, but if you have any questions, please put it in the chat or raise your hand. Alanis will be monitoring the questions for the Q&A session. So our first prepared question is, what would be your #1 suggestions for final year students who are considering what to do after finishing their degrees?
I can go first. Yeah, I think for me, I thought the most important thing was to discuss a lot, but then in the end, you take the decision yourself. I think especially coming from an Indian background, there are lots of people trying to tell you what to do. And it's great because it helps you brainstorm ideas, etc. But in the end, I think it has to be your decision, and that should purely arise from what you enjoy doing and where you see yourself going, regardless of whether it matches with what everyone else is saying or not. Forget about it. Just do what you want to do.
Yeah, my answer aligns largely with that. To, like Indrani said, be open to lots of different opportunities, hear different perspectives, but ultimately back yourself in what you want to do, and follow that, because there's a lot of paths. There's many different paths to one destination, right? And you don't need to. If all three of us have very different journeys to get to where we are, and they're all valid and all we've learned a lot along the way. And so the people you talk to and I guess perspectives you get, you're not going to follow any one of their journeys perfectly, but it gives you an idea of what's out there, and that decision has to rest with you. And I think the one piece of advice I have in this space that stuck with me since I was a grad student trying to finish is it's a policy I call the "What would John do" policy. I was finishing my PhD, about a year left, and a friend of mine named John, who's just the loveliest man, he was giving me a hard time for not applying for a faculty position. And I was like, I am way not qualified for this, not even close. He's like, well, I would do it. And I was like, seriously? You're the most lovely but average person in this space. And if you would apply for this, I didn't apply for that faculty position, but I've taken that policy and been like, what would John do in this? And I've applied for things I thought I wouldn't get. And that is how I got to CSIRO. And when I told my mentors at CSIRO that was, I applied thinking I wouldn't get it, they're like, are you crazy? And so, yeah, you need to back yourself. And I think that can be hard for us sometimes. But if you think of someone in your life like John, what would they do? Then apply anyways. You never know what opportunities come up.
I completely agree with that, and the same sort of theme with what you both said. I would definitely encourage anyone that's heading towards their last year or finishing up their undergrads or masters or PhD or whatever you're doing, study space, to definitely join societies like this, or any other society where you can actually talk to people in the industry, or even in academia, or in the positions that you think that you might be interested in doing, because you can just talk to them and say, what do you do on a day-to-day? And if you picture yourself doing that, or you think that you would actually enjoy doing that, then that's a really good place to start, because it's very cliche. It sounds very cliche, but this industry is very much who you know sometimes. And the more people you know, and the more people you get to know, I think the better. Even if it's just not just to know about people's experiences, but also usually jobs come up by word of mouth or positions come up by that way as well. So if you're talking to people regularly enough, and even if you're interested in it, they might not know you're qualified or not, but they'll think of you because you've said, oh, I'm interested in this. And I think that's a really good way to get your foot in the door sometimes. So just join societies, go to events, and talk to people that you don't know, start conversations. It's just the best way, I think.
That's great suggestions. Our second question is, what benefits, this is mostly for Mikayla and Jess. What benefits can completing PhD master's honors have for working in the industry or government?
Jess, do you want to go first?
Sure, yeah. I guess it depends on the role that you want to have in those organizations. I guess you don't need a PhD even to work with CSIRO in the research space. We've lots of colleagues that have come from industry into research in government, and those are really important roles. So you don't need to have it, but if you, depending on what you want to do, for me, what the importance of doing that PhD taught me other skills outside of just my field of research. And so that was around, project planning and communication, and I did a lot of teaching as well, so communicating different groups. And so there's other skills that come through that process. If you want to be a domain expert consulted in this one niche thing working for a big mining company, you probably need a PhD in that research experience, but it really depends what your goal is. But yeah, I guess the benefit for me was I would say the science I learned. I don't use during my PhD. I don't use any of it really anymore. Very little. It's those other skills that I learned for the research process and other things that I utilize on a more daily basis. I haven't looked at a pyrite grain in 5 years. So, yeah.
Yeah, I tend to agree. It's definitely the soft skills that you learn. I think I mentioned before, things like time management and just, I guess, working alone. Not everyone works alone in their master's or PhD, but I definitely did. And just having that, what's the word? I guess, yeah, just you're working off your own back, you're motivating yourself. You always have that support to go to, but it's learning to self-motivate and to find the things that you need to do because it benefits yourself. And I guess in terms of reporting, I've found that in my current role, it definitely helps to have those other soft skills, like report writing or documenting and time management and delivering on reports and things like that. I find much easier because, you did it for years, and then you're in a position that your bosses are asking the same sort of thing, really. It's just twisting it a little bit to suit what you're doing. So I think those skills definitely big benefit. I honestly, I think that I learned more than I learned in undergrad doing my master's. But I also think that's because I became a better learner the longer I stayed at university. And yeah, I think that's often the case for a lot of people. You just get better at learning, you get better at being a student the longer you're a student. So yeah. Yeah,
I've heard that transferable skills from research or studies to like other kind of jobs are very it's what we need to highlight when we finish our studies and looking for jobs in other sectors. Indrani, would you like to add something to Mikayla's or Jess' response?
Yeah, I think as you said, this was more of a question for Jess and Mikayla, but I will say that having managed industry projects, I realized how the science we are doing in academia versus the science that's required by industry can sometimes be different, and it's being able to understand that. So we tend to go into the nitty-gritty of things a bit too into deep, but sometimes when you're working on industry projects, it makes you realize that it's more about the application of it, and yeah, you tend to understand how you can use the same scientific knowledge for different applications. And so I think the mode of research is different. And so when I'd write a scientific journal paper, it will have a different scientific flavor compared to preparing a report for a mining company. So that's something that, you know, you get an experience of if you're doing an honors or a master's, if it's linked to an industry project rather than a regular academic one. But yeah, I think Mikayla and Jess have covered more important things already.
Thank you. And our third question is, how did you find the transition from studying to working, and how to make this transition after many years of being a student? Like if you did your undergrad, honors, maybe master's and PhD, and suddenly you need to move away from the academia. How do you manage to do that? Yes? Would you like to start?
Sure, that's a trick. Yeah, so I was in uni for a long time. I did, I guess it took me 6 years to do my bachelor's in honors because I was playing basketball at the time. Then I took another 6 or so years to do my PhD because I was working in industry. And so it was, I guess the key for me was as I worked towards the end of my degree, the PhD program as in was starting to prepare me for the work that I was going into. As a postdoc, I was doing research and supervising students and teaching, and I was doing that in the last 4 years of my PhD already. So that transition was pretty smooth, and having that time working in industry during that as well gave me a completely different perspective on how that works. But that was in a mine environment where I was just told what to do, and it made me realize I didn't want to do that as a career. I liked the flexibility and the mental gymnastics of research. But I'd say that the biggest transition for me was when I moved to Australia into CSIRO, because I wasn't, it was different than academia. There's slightly less flexibility. And I think the transition was, it took me a while to transition effectively, I think. I wasn't always the most, I guess, efficient worker because I didn't have to be as a grad student or even as a postdoc. And now having external deadlines, I had to learn how to say no to some things and prioritize my work a little bit more. And so it took time. And the key thing for me in making that transition was finding mentors in that organization and people I worked with to help me find my way through. And that, I guess, through all those things, is having that network, whether they're formal mentors or just senior colleagues that you can chat with to help you navigate that system is really critical, I think.
Yeah, that's a really good suggestions, having mentors. Mikayla, would you like to go?
Sure. Yeah, I actually struggled with the fact that I was now getting paid for something that I just really like doing. So when I transitioned from being a student, and you're paying for that course, you're paying to gain that, that knowledge and those skills, and then all of a sudden I'm doing pretty much the same thing, but now I'm getting paid for it. It was like a weird sense of guilt that took me a little while to be okay with and overcome, and actually tell myself, oh no, I deserve to be paid for this because this is my job. And I went to university to get this job, and that's why I'm here. And it was sort of just a weird thing that I had to keep telling myself for the first 6 months. But yeah, a lot of the same things that Jess said. It was definitely about prioritizing different tasks and definitely knowing what to spend more time on in terms of technical tasks, and similar to what Indrani was saying before about the nitty-gritty and the detail of the science that we do at university is not always translated into the practical side of the application that in the industry, and knowing when to stop and also knowing when to say no is definitely something else that I still don't do. I don't know how to do. I say yes to everything for some reason, and I just haven't learned that skill yet, but I'm sure I'll get there. But yeah, those were some of the things that I sort of not struggled with, but definitely was a surprise to me when I came into the industry, that I would have those feelings, and sort of wasn't something that I was prepared for. But it you get over it eventually, and you realize that your worth. And I'm sure a lot of people on this call can probably resonate with the whole imposter syndrome kind of thing. And that's probably something else that I definitely felt and still do feel on occasion. So I think that creeps in as well when you're in that transition period between student and industry. But I think it's just being aware of those things, and yeah, definitely having good mentors and people around you to talk to, say, oh, you know, are these feelings valid? Should I be feeling this way? Why am I feeling this way? Just talk it out. And yeah, there's lots of people that have definitely felt the same way, I guarantee you, so they can help you through.
Thank you. Indrani?
Yeah, I've had a bit of a different experience, I'd say, to Jess and Mikayla. It was really weird for me, and I really want to share this because it's relevant. So after being once you finished your PhD and once you take on a postdoctoral role at an Australian university, you are considered staff. So quite often you teach, you have teaching responsibilities, you are members for various committees, you're treated just like any other academic staff. And so I did a 3.5 years of postdoc, and then I started doing took up the lecturer position, although it was a contract, but still I got promoted to a level B, and then I was taking, teaching and research responsibilities and all of that. But then when I went to Canada, where postdocs are basically considered as students, they're no different to PhDs. So it was like a weird transition for me, because I was used to, I don't know, having a good pay. I didn't feel all that guilty, Mikayla, I have to be honest. I loved it. But then, you suddenly, you're at this position, and then suddenly you go to another country where postdocs are, you didn't have much teaching responsibility and none of that, but you didn't have that position either. You had to share offices. And so that was a weird change for me. And then, but that was only for 6 months. And I really wanted to, I accepted it. I had to, there was no other way. And I didn't mind, except that when I came back to Australia, and now I was in a lecturer position again, it was a huge change for me all of a sudden. So your question about how to stop being in a student mentality to then, you're working now. And I thought I did pretty well to get out of it during my postdoctoral years. But when I went back to Canada, and I had to, really, we also postdoctoral salaries in Canada are almost half the amount in Australia. So there were huge amount of changes in my life. And I was like, hang on a second, did I just get demoted in my life altogether? And then you accept it, and you just get on with it. And then when you have to do the reverse again, it suddenly gets really harder. And so for the first couple of months, I was really struggling to get my head around, okay, what it is that I'm doing. And like, I knew what I was doing, but it was just very hard to make that transition. It gets better as you get more responsibilities, and people pat you on the back if you've done something right or whatever, and it just gets better. But that was really a weird situation for me. And there's something I really want to share here, which is why I had this extra slide, that there will be, I don't know if everyone is going to face this issue, but there will be a time when you will face this issue. And if you do, I just say motor on. This picture is quite popular at UTAS. It was taken because the university wanted an academic and a student in the field, just for their magazines and prospectus and things like that. They wanted the photograph taken at tessellated pavements early in the morning. And I remember the cameraman saying, who's the academic and who's the student? And I was 2 years out of my PhD at the time, and I was filling in for the academic. And the cameraman was like, no, we're going to switch. And so Joe Knight, who was at the time doing his PhD, was supposedly looked more academic than I did. And even till date, this prospectus and other places, it says science students, because I obviously didn't have the look of an academic. So that's something one has to deal with, and it's very annoying. it was extremely, and I remember telling my partner that morning that I bet this is going to happen. And he was like, no, don't worry, don't overthink or don't be negative, etc. That is exactly what happened. And so this may happen to some of you as well. And all I have to say is like, get super angry and say something. I didn't say anything because I was so taken aback and I guess flustered. I think I'd kill them now, but like at the time I didn't have the confidence. But these things can happen and it's really annoying. And it's like, gee, what do I have to do to myself to make, take me seriously? And so I just wanted to share this because A, it's very liberating and cathartic. And second, this might happen to you. And I don't know, I'd say something. And if you can't say something, maybe just get like super angry and have a gin and soda or something. I don't know.
Thanks for sharing that, Indrani. That's actually very annoying. And yeah, I understand you. Something similar happened to me in my first job. They asked me if I was looking for my father when I was in the office. And I was like, well, okay. But yeah, I understand. So thanks for sharing that experience. And I hope that this is changing, hopefully. We have a few other prepared questions, but if you have questions, please raise your hand or write them in the chat. So the next question is, are there any choices you made or situations that arose in your career that you would make or handle differently? Jess, would you like to start?
Sure. Yeah, I don't think there's been any like major choices that I've made in terms of career path. I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out in the long run. But I think there's situations definitely, especially as a student, when I should have probably backed myself and stood up for myself more. There's a lot of power dynamics involved in grad school that aren't necessarily always healthy, and students are put in a position where people who have some power over their career ask them to do things that are outside the scope of probably what a grad student should do in terms of, I don't know, all sorts of things. And so there's times when I probably should have stood up for myself more and for other students that were in toxic, I guess, power dynamic situations. It's hard to do as a student. And I feel that's something that's really pushed, some of those experiences will push me now when I'm in a more senior role to be very vocal and open and visible as a, I guess, a queer person in geoscience, and pushing for equity and inclusion of all folks, because it hasn't always been the case. And so I wish I had backed myself in some of those situations as a young person, but it's easier said than done, I guess.
Yes. And Mikayla?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question before, and I feel very much the same in terms of there's probably no choice that I've made that I would change, but there are definitely situations that I would handle differently. Even things like negotiating pay, or, anything else to do with your working environment or your work duties or your role responsibilities, just making sure that you're backing yourself and you're standing up for yourself and you're asking for things that you want. I don't think there's anything else that I would really change apart from maybe also just saying no more in situations. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I'd advise whenever you're in a transition period, you're starting a new job at a new company, or you're starting a new role at the same company, just make sure that you're thinking about your needs and things that'll benefit you, because obviously the employer is always going to think about the benefit of the company, and you need to make sure that your interests are, being looked after. So yeah, definitely that.
Thank you. And Indrani?
Yeah, thanks for a really good question. It's a really important one because the reason I went straight back into my childhood was because I wanted to just let everyone know that I went to a boarding school, and then I went to Delhi, and then I went to Australia, and then I went to Canada, and I've never actually spent time with my family in this pursuit of this career. And am I happy with my career? Yes, I am, but it has come at a great cost to me. And had I wished things were different, I don't know how different it could be then, and would it then have to come at the cost of my career? And so I don't know, I just thought I'd mention this because when people move overseas, move their entire lives overseas, it comes at a huge cost. Not that I'm taking anything away from Mikayla and Jess. I don't mean to diminish your careers at all, but I just thought I'd put another perspective into this thing, that I've had to do all of this, and I'm very happy with my career and all of that. But if I genuinely think about it, and I did a lot during really bad times during COVID, that I've actually not spent any time with my family. I mean, yes, a vacation here and there, or visiting once in a year. I can only do it now. When I was doing my PhD, I couldn't afford to go back and forth either. So it has come at a great cost, but I don't have an answer to the question in the sense that would I have done things differently, because I'm very grateful for the career that I've had. But yeah, one thing that I wish I did differently was maintain a lot of my Indian contacts. I think I was too keen to establish, make myself known, or collaborate with the West. I'm just putting you all in the same box, please. I apologize for that, but I think you know what I mean, because I thought I'm just come out of India. This is my opportunity to make myself more visible to everyone else. And in the process, I think I didn't burn my bridges exactly, but didn't sort of solidify the contacts I had. So I wish I did more of that. I am doing it now, finally. But yeah, I wish I had done more of that.
Thank you. And our final pre-prepared question before we move on into the questions from the audience is how to step us sideways, like trying something new in your career. Which recommendations do you have for people that want to have a change in their roles? Jess?
Yeah, it's a good one. I feel like I've done it pretty, like my career's been all over the place. For me, I've kind of followed my curiosity and been really open to other, I guess, experiences. And for me, I guess the key of making it work is valuing or understanding the value that I can bring to something, even when it's not my field of expertise, that you can bring another perspective to that. And that a lot of the skills you learn just because you did your bachelor's in one thing or undergrad or PhD in one thing doesn't mean you're going to do that the rest of your life. No one does that. And that's okay. and so yeah, it's expected that people will, there's a couple niche academics that will study one isotope for their entire career, but most people don't follow that journey. And so I think one of the key things is to spend some time I guess realizing where your strengths lie and be comfortable with that. It's okay to say, if someone asks you a question at a conference, like, I'm not an expert in that, I don't know. And that people respect you more for saying, that's not my field of expertise, this is what I know, but I'm moving into that, or this is the person you should talk to. And so being kind of self-aware and honest about that, and finding those people that you work with. So I'm one of those folks that I know a little bit about a lot of things. And that's what I find interesting. A bit of, people like to say jack of all trades, mostly it's just ADHD, but it's what I like doing, and that's where my skills lie. I'm really comfortable with that, and I think that's a real asset I can bring to something. So, and the other key thing, I think, especially if you're going to do some more serious side steps is to build your network and build mentors that can help guide you through that process, because you don't need to know everything, but you just know enough to find the right person. And so for me, having a broad network and a broad range of mentors across different spaces has allowed me to kind of make those jumps into a situation where you're not just jumping off a cliff and hoping I'll learn geology, but you put yourself in a situation where you have the network around you to help make that transition in a smoother way, I guess. It's a really long-winded answer, but the most important thing I would say though is back yourself.
Yeah, that's great suggestion. And Mikayla?
I probably have, the least to add to this, having not really sidestepped much in my career so far. But I guess I would definitely say within your company, talk to people in different departments and just align yourself with where your interests lie and just follow that. If something might be completely different to what you do, but you're interested in it, just talk to those people. And I guess, Mary is on this call and things like secondments exist and you can reach out and apply for other positions at your company, or even, if you decide you've had enough of that company and you want to go elsewhere, then just take the opportunity. And like Jess was saying before, even if you think you might not be qualified for something, just back yourself and have a crack. And most people learn a lot of what they do when they're in their positions, not before they get into that position. So just keep that in mind as well. And if you really want to try something, then you should go for it.
Thank you. Indrani?
I've also not tried very many new things, and I'm actually, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like we should focus on one thing a lot, because I don't know, I just have a bit of a different perspective to things, because I think we do different things, so it looks good on our CV and all of that, and I agree with it. And if that's what one wants to do, then that's great. But in my case, I wanted to do the one thing over and over and over again, because I just simply loved it. And I feel like maybe if we just invest a lot of time on this one thing and get it done properly, maybe it'll be really good. So I don't know, I've quite often been told, oh, you've got to do something other than pyrite. And I think I really should, because that's the way things are done. But I mean, how about I just worked on pyrite, but did different things with it, rather than just doing a little bit work on pyrite and then doing something else. I mean, that can be done. But what I'm saying is that if you really love something, you could still keep doing it, but just do different things with it. So in my case, I've worked on the chemistry of pyrite, but I've done different things with it. And I am trying to branch out. I promise you, I've got enough pressure around me to make me do that. But I just thought that sometimes it's nice when everyone says, even right now, Jess, Mikayla and I are telling you all sorts of things, but I don't know, in the end it's your decision what you do. So but if you want to try something new, my number one advice would be just to be prepared that things will go wrong. I mean, if things were always right miraculously, I mean, that's just unreal, isn't it? Let's just face it, things will go wrong. Simple as that. And we just have to be prepared for it. That's all. But yeah, definitely try new things. But if you like the one thing, I'd say go for it. Don't listen to anyone else.
That's great to hear.
There's an important role for those really deep understanding of things, Indrani. So I wasn't, not devaluing that role.
No, I know, Jess. I just thought I'd be you be the yang, I'll be the yin, or whichever one is the evil one, I'll be that.
and I'll just be in the middle.
It's great to hear that both options are like great. Like if you love something, you can keep doing it, and if you want to like move fields or have a change in your life, that's also great. I think what we hear a lot is that we need to back ourselves and believe in ourselves, have good mentors, and so thanks a lot for all the suggestions. I think we have a couple of questions in the chat.
Yes, we do have a couple of questions in the chat. So the first one is how important were women role models for you during your path to reach where you are today? So did you have any really important women role models on your path to where you are? Jess, do you want to go first?
Sure. I didn't have any. And that's because there weren't any that I related to. And that's something that didn't really strike me until I was teaching undergrad courses. And I was back at the uni where I did my undergrad, and one of my friends said, if you were my first year earth science teacher, I might have stayed in earth science. And that kind of, and I pulled now, other colleagues of mine, like, do you know any like queer women who are out and identifying senior roles in geoscience? And none of us could think of any. And so, so it's been important to find, role models that I can relate to in other ways, but I haven't necessarily had any female role models. I've had other, LGBTIQS men, allied, just men of different varieties. But yeah, but I hope now that that's changing, and I think it is changing. I would have loved to have that.
Yeah, but I mean, following up on that, especially for you, Jess, how does it feel to now be a role model for people coming up? Is there like a lot of weight and responsibility on being a role model, or can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, it's been a bit surreal, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm glad I can be in that role. I feel like I kind of, after that experience teaching as a postdoc, I was like, that's something that was like, I need to do that now, because I've and so there is some responsibility, I guess, but there's shared responsibility, and I haven't put it all on me. I have a network of folks who I think we're starting to share that load. And I also can see that my experience is different than other people's, and I can't be everyone's role model, because not everyone sees me in that their experience in mine. And so it's I try and think of it as trying to be that role model I wish I had when I was 18, 19, 20 coming up. But
well, I think you're doing an incredible job. What about Mikayla? Did you have any role models?
I also did not have any women role models. All of the mentors that I have been absolutely fantastic and amazing. They've all been men, just by chance. And I don't think I would change that, because they have been such amazing mentors to me. And again, I think similarly to Jess, they just weren't there. They just weren't women around that could fill that role for me. I think it is changing. There are more and more women, especially in senior roles and leadership roles now in the industry. But I don't know. I guess I've always thought that a great mentor should be someone that you can relate to, and that you have a lot of alignment with morally, ethically. Also, just the way that they explain things obviously needs to resonate with how you learn and how you take information in. I think if you find a good match of that, then you found a really good mentor for you, specifically for you, because it's not always that a great mentor for someone else is going to be a great mentor for you. But yeah, no women, unfortunately.
Indrani, did you have any?
Yeah, I think I'll second what Jess and Mikayla said during my early part of my geology career. We had one teacher, female teacher at the University of Delhi, but my mentors were all men. In fact, the reason I took up geology was because of this fantastic economic geology teacher. However, I have to say that in Tasmania, at University of Tasmania, I was surrounded by a fantastic group of female mentors, and they were incredible. Really, I just simply cannot emphasize to be surrounded by good mentors, female, male, anything within or beyond. I don't care what gender they are, but as long as they're nice mentors, the ones not who will just keep telling you how good you are, but also pull you back in line when you're not doing well. You just want an honest opinion, and not everyone will give you that. And so it's so important to have. So yeah, like I showed in my presentation, Jackie Hallepin, I can also name Rebecca Carey and Joe Whitaker. They were all, Jodie Fox, they were all just incredible women to be around. And so I was very fortunate to have that at University of Tasmania when I was there. And that was really important to me. But I will agree with Jess and Mikayla at the, during the start of my career, we didn't have any female teachers, let alone mentors. So.
I think
Well,
it's probably also important to say that while I didn't have any of those mentors, that it was my immediate peer network that played that role for me. My office mates as a grad student, the other postdocs, that network is what helped carry me through and also connected me with other more senior people. And so that, it's important to maintain that as well if you don't have that mentor. And it doesn't have, even in the mentor space, they don't have to be formal mentors, but seeking out those different, it's come up a few times now, people with different perspectives and different in your organization or otherwise, that you can look outside that formal mentor relationship to kind of build your career path. And for me, that's been critical, is having that. I'm still connected with those people. And so
well, I'm so sorry that none of you had any strong role models, but you are all fantastic role models for everyone watching today and everyone in our geological community. The next question that we have on the chat is from Imogen, and it's, when looking for jobs or opportunities, are there any signs that you have seen or heard that suggest that maybe you shouldn't go for a job? So maybe any kind of red flags, potentially maybe on a job application, red flags saying maybe you shouldn't go for it. Mikayla, have you seen anything like that at the start of your career?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of kind of really broad red flag statements that you might see on a lot of advertising for jobs. Just throwaway phrases like flexible or balanced work life, whatever. And then sometimes, it's really not that. Like they put phrases like that in there to shape what they think that you want to hear. But then when you actually see what the details of that are, they're not aligned with a work-life balance at all. It's just those kind of phrases are, I think, trying to be green flags and entice you, but they end up being red flags. So I would just caution that any broad phrase like that, if you see on a job advertisement, that you just question every one of them and get the facts, get the details of that phrase. Say, can you please explain exactly what this means, or what does this mean for this company? Because if it's that broad and throwaway, it can just sort of be applicable to everyone, and that's what they're going for. They want people to apply. So I'd just be wary of that kind of phrasing.
Yeah, thanks. Jess, what about you? Did you have any insights?
Trying to know like specific phrases or signs, but I'd definitely, once you get to the interview process, there's signs and things like if you question some of those phrases and they don't have legitimate answers, I would argue, and this is something I'm working on internally right now, is that we should have those explanations in the job description. And it should say at the front, not just we value diversity and inclusion, but we have a gender affirmation policy. We're AWI gold status. We're these, because those are barriers to application to start with. I don't think I would even apply for a job anymore that doesn't have any sort of explicit diversity stuff and that talks about what they're actually doing. It's not just waving a rainbow flag. But that evidence, if they can't back that up. And then there's, for me as a queer person, there's a lot of little flags, red flags that you see, those microaggressions and things. People will make mistakes, but when you correct someone for misgendering you or your partner and they don't respond in a I guess respectful or genuine way, it's done. Yeah. Right. There's we're past the point where we should have to deal with situations that aren't inclusive or even safe for us. And so
Yeah, I 100% agree. That's a really great point. Indrani, did you have anything else to say?
Not from the adverts itself, but like Jess said, once you are going through the interview process, you can pick up on things. And yeah, there are some subtle signs, but honestly, like academic positions at least are so hard to come by. I've always looked beyond that. HR is very good at making sure the job adverts look so appealing that you apply for them at the drop of a hat. But it's really when you go through the interview process that you realize, or you get a sense of what even then you're probably only getting, the tip of the iceberg. But the diversity statement really gets to me, because, I've put in a lot of effort preparing those statements, whether it's in North America or in Australia. And while I'm preparing them, I'm thinking, I don't know why I'm doing these, because quite often I would get told by people that, oh, you're getting an interview because they have to tick the diversity box. And I was like, okay, well, so be it. Let's give the diverse person a go. See if she can, or they can do a job. Let's just see if they're up to it. Honestly, it's just so irritating. But then you're doomed if you don't give that option, right? So you want to, it's a very tricky situation these days. Like on one hand, we want more diversity. On the second hand, if people mention it, we get upset. So it's a weird situation, and I think people will talk for a while, but if one does a good job, then they'll have to just, shut up at some point. So yeah, it's something that I suppose you just get used to and just get on with it, I suppose. But don't know if I've picked up on any of my previous job advertisements. I was so desperate to apply for them that I didn't really worry too much. But there are problems, that's for sure.
yeah, I have an example that just came to mind where when I was at SARO, I was applying for faculty roles in Canada still, and I was offered an interview, and I had it was over Christmas break. I had an out of office reply saying, I'm out of office for Christmas holidays. I will not be on, like I was out camping in the middle of WA, and the amount of emails they sent me back asking for a response during that holiday break when I had out of office reply, I declined the interview. And I was just like,
yeah,
this was my 3 years ago, my dream job. But if that is, I'd just come out of like recovering from burnout after my PhD and finishing all that stuff up. And I was like, that's it. Like, no, this is the first holiday I've had. I put my computer away for 2 weeks. And if you're harassing me by email every 2 days about this, then
yeah,
that's how you value kind of people's time.
yeah.
It turned out for the
Yeah.
best. The university went bankrupt and they hired half the staff shortly after. So.
Lucky. And then Mikayla also wrote in the chat that she hates the phrase positive discrimination. So I think that's a nice one to kind of tie that one up. So one of the next questions, it's about industry, but I think it can apply to pretty much government or academia. So people in industry often tell geology graduates that they can fight for higher salaries. Is this a realistic discussion graduates can actually have? Mikayla, we'll start with you since you're in industry.
Yeah, and having been recently a part of a graduate program,
Yeah.
I can attest to this specifically. 100% yes, you can fight for it. You can ask the question. You're not losing anything by approaching your seniors and saying, can I have the conversation around pay or increase, or if there's no harm in having that conversation. You're going to be reprimanded for asking the question. Obviously there are ways, there are good and bad ways to go about that. And if you have a case or reasoning for why you deserve that, or that obviously helps, and not just to walk in and say, I want more money. But I just think that the simple answer to that is yes, you can. Yes, on the other flip side of that, companies would often have a set salary for graduates in first year, in second year, also depending on which, what type of graduate you are, if you're a mining engineer or if you're an exploration geologist, or, whatever the title. they'll often have set salaries for those positions. But that doesn't mean, you know, there's zero flexibility in any of that. If you have the right case to back yourself and that kind of stuff, then they have to consider it. So yeah, it's just no harm in trying, I think.
Yeah. Indrani, is there anything in academia, do you think, that?
No, well, I don't know, you when you join a position, I mean, sorry, what was the question? It was the geology graduates for high salary. So I think if you're starting out as a postdoc, you don't necessarily negotiate. It's just based on your post PhD, how many years you're out. But when you join a faculty position, you can negotiate, and that's something I didn't know. But luckily, I had good mentors around me, and they were like, "No, negotiate a higher position." I was like, "No way! I've got the job. That's it. I'm really super grateful." And they're like, "No, that's what the problem is. That's what women need to negotiate these things, because we're like just so grateful we've even landed up with a job that we don't even think about it, whereas men just go straight for the thing." And so that's something that I almost cringed when I drafted that email. But like I said, I wouldn't even do that if I didn't have good mentors around me. So you can negotiate when you are getting a faculty position. But I think if it's a postdoctoral research, even then you should like definitely check if they're paying you, if they're hiring you at the rate that they should be. So if you're, I don't know, 5 years out of your PhD and they're putting you on an A6, then you should just say, "Hey, that's not right." And it's all set. Usually universities are good at that, but when it's contract based, sometimes people can be it can be tricky. So I would definitely watch out for that. Make sure you know how many years out of your PhD you are, and then that's the level you should be on. It's all fixed, so you can always look it up. Every university has its salary guidelines, so definitely look at it.
Yeah. Jess, did you want to add anything to this?
Sure, yeah. I think just covering what they've said, that's where the "what would John do" policy comes in. It's, yes, try and negotiate. In government, there's it's all public, and so you can Google and say what are the pay scales for CSIRO, and it'll come up, or federal, or GA, or whoever it is. But within those, I guess there's the main levels which have certain capabilities and I guess skills you need to sit. But within those levels, there's several sub-levels which are really flexible. And so you may not be able to negotiate up from a 5 to a 6 or a 4 to a 5, but within those there's a 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, which are all the postdoc levels. And so, so ask, and there's ways to do it without being pushy or rude, but you absolutely should be assertive in that space, because no one else will do it for you.
Yeah. Awesome, thank you. We have one last question, and that's it's mostly for Jeff, but Indrani and Mikayla, you're more than welcome to get on the back of that question if you've got anything else to say. So the question is, what kind of opportunities exist at CSIRO for geoscience? And they also say you're doing a fabulous job, Jess. So
thanks. What sort of opportunities exist within CSIRO? That's a tough one to answer, because CSIRO is a bit of a beast. There's 5,000 people working there across 12 business units. In the mineral resources group where I'm at, there's 90 folks in the discovery program, which is just the program working on exploration aspects of stuff. So there's room for geoscientists across all aspects of CSIRO. Most, I guess, we hire postdocs, research scientists, technicians. So there's lots of opportunities. Also, in terms of if you're still a student, we have PhD and postdoc, or say PhD internships and things like that. If you're really interested, get in touch with me. That's probably the easiest way, because the CSIRO website is awful for navigating that space. But there's all sorts of opportunities. Like within the program I work in, there's 90 of us, and we've got like geochemists, geophysicists, mathematicians, software engineers, like every aspect of the geoscience value, or even minerals value chain is represented within the minerals business unit of CSIRO. Plus we have egg and food and environment where geoscience feeds into those as well. So that's one of the, I guess, exciting things about being there is there's lots of ways to go try something new or go sideways.
Yeah.
Space,
It's a big diverse group of lots of different career opportunities.
I never thought I'd be doing what I am now. So
yeah. I'll hand back over to Fernanda to close the panel discussion, but thank you guys so much.
Yes, well, thank you so much to Indrani, Mikayla, and Jess for sharing their journeys with us. It was a really, really insightful panel. Thank you so much for all the suggestions and for spending 1.5 hours with us. We really appreciate it. And again, thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you in the future.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Organizing.
Feel free to message or email on LinkedIn or anything else if anyone has any questions.
Sure.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
And I guess I will mention just at the end that the recording will be made available on our YouTube site. So if anyone needs to rewatch it or forget someone's name or something and needs to go have a look, you can check that out.
Yes, I will stop the recording now.